And welcome in, everybody. This is Pucks on the Pine Tree Pod. My name is Benjamin Kennedy. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am very excited to welcome in a special guest, Ace, creator and host of Running with the Devils podcast. He has been kind enough to take some time out of his busy schedule to discuss all the ongoing season outlook for the New Jersey Devils. So, Ace, welcome in.
Thanks for having me, Benjamin. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to have you here. You have probably forgotten more about New Jersey than I'll ever know. So you're the perfect person to talk about as we get into, I think, what will be a really exciting season down there for the Devils. But before we get into that, just we're into the middle of August. How's your summer going?
Typical summer, man. Just trying to, go to some of the Jersey Shore beaches here and there when I
Mhm.
can, hanging out with my nephews at the pool, and just counting down the days until puck drop.
What are we, 50 something days, something like that, I think?
Devils are probably a little bit sooner because we're in the Global Series starting off in Prague. So
Oh,
I think it's October 4th and 5th. So we're about
I think you're
7
right.
weeks, 7 weeks or so. Can't come soon enough.
Yeah, I know. I've watched enough baseball for a lifetime at this point. Like, give me something else to watch. You know? Oh, that's great. I know it's summer always goes quick, but it always seems like, when that season ends, whether it be April, May, or if you're lucky, June, it's just like it's just the hockey piece, which just seems to drag. It's like, come on, let's just get back to it. So,
Especially for
we'll
my
get.
boys, quite a long off season for the Devils club.
My Bruins weren't too far behind you, so I think we had
Oh, come
another.
on. You saw playoff hockey.
I
You saw
did, I
playoff
did.
hockey, and you saw
Wait,
a victory round, and then you saw, a second round ouster, but
mm, mm.
much better than not
That,
qualifying.
yeah, no, it's first world problems. I guess I can't complain
Absolutely. The
too much, right?
definition of it.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but before we kind of dive into actually looking at New Jersey, want to take a moment to let my audience get to know you a little bit. You've been podcasting for a while with your channel. Kind of what got you into podcasting, and how long have you been running your own show?
So, I've had the channel for I don't know, I think I actually the first video I actually uploaded was April something. It was the last home game of the 22-23 season, which happened to be Luke Hughes' NHL debut,
Oh,
and
nice.
I was at the game, and I was sitting in these kind of cool suites where you have access to see the players before they hit the ice, and not too many people are in there. And so I just happened to be there. I took a pretty cool video of Luke just kind of pacing around and BSing with some of the other guys before he went out to do his rookie lap. And that was the first video I published, and it did pretty well. I had no long term plans for any of it, and I just thought um, I go to a ton of games and Devils related events and things. So I was like, oh, I'll just throw some clips up here and there.
Mhm.
I had actually started a channel and I kick myself every day for kind of dropping it. But like in 2010,
Oh,
before everyone
wow.
had the video phones and all that stuff, um, I had a channel where I would just put up, clips and things from at games and signings and interactions with players. And then life got in the way and I kind of stopped doing it. I've since then lost all the emails and logins. So when I started to do this, I thought I'd revive that one. Wasn't an option. So I started that. And the first video I put up was Luke Hughes. And then, during that whole playoff run, put up a ton of videos. And I never actually planned on talking on the videos. And then from talking with friends and Devils fan friends and looking at other content online, I was like, you know what? I think maybe, I could give this a shot. I enjoy talking about hockey, the Devils specifically with other fans and networking with other fans. So I thought, oh, I'll give this a shot and see where it goes. And here we are. It's been I've been probably doing videos where I'm talking about the team for about a year or so.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, man, it goes by quick. It's been about a year, but that's kind of how I started getting into it. I always loved talking hockey. I only have a few hockey fan friends. It's not super popular in New Jersey. It's obviously grown with the generations, but when I was in elementary school, there's only a handful of kids that liked hockey. And so, I have a few good friends that are Devils fans, but I was like, this is a good way to just kind of talk about the team and get other people's opinions and network with other fans. And that's kind of why I started doing it. And now I'm kind of down the rabbit hole of doing this.
I hear you. I hear you. No, that's awesome. I kind of feel the same way. I have a few friends who are big into hockey, but then I talk to some people about it. You can just see their eyes start to shut and they kind of shut down like I have no interest in hockey, Ben. So it's like, all right, I guess I won't talk to you anymore about it. So
Not for everybody, but the greatest sport on the face of the earth for sure.
100%. I didn't grow up a hockey fan. Probably not until I was like 10 or 12. I got into hockey. But I was always more of a baseball, a little bit of basketball, football guy. And
Mhm.
once I discovered hockey, I talked about it on my very first podcast when I was introducing my whole concept. It was a buddy of mine um, started a fantasy hockey league. And I think we were like 10 or 11. Everything was like by mail, and he would look at the newspaper to get all the stats and everything.
Mhm.
And he kind of introduced me to this game, and I was just blown away by it, like, "This is amazing, like, how did I miss this?" Over these years, so, no, best game in the world for sure, for sure. Um, so when we look back over the past couple seasons for New Jersey, it's been kind of a tale of 2 kinda 2 seasons. Lindy Ruff, obviously hard not to talk about Lindy over the last couple of years. Of course, he's now gone to Buffalo. Um, you had that, what was it, 2 years ago where you guys were a game and a half in, the fire Lindy chants were going on, and but I just curious your perspective on Lindy Ruff, what your thoughts were on the job he did for New Jersey.
Lindy Ruff will always have a special place in my heart. I the way it all unfolded, I do believe it was unfortunate that, we had listen, he was the coach of the 22-23 team that set a franchise record with 112 points, beat the Rangers in 7 games in the first round before ultimately losing to the Hurricanes in the second round. And with the success that the team had in the past, 3 Stanley Cups in 1995, 2000, 2003, to set a franchise record in points during a regular season is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, we've had, I tell all the younger fans that watch my channel, we had 3 of the greatest players in NHL history on the same team in their prime, and Martin Brodeur in net, Scott Stevens, and Scott Niedermayer on the blue line. When the NHL did that top 100 list,
Mm,
what was it, 4 or 5 years ago now, all of those guys were on the list and pretty high up there. So, you know, whenever you get more points in a season than all of those teams did, that's something special. And then they obviously won, a 7-game series against the Rangers. And I'll always remember Lindy for that. Do think he was responsible for some good development of some of the young talent with Jack Hughes and Nico Heischer and some of the other guys we have in the organization. And unfortunately, I just think that, maybe the message got old
mm,
in this past season. And a lot of it, I think, was beyond his control. And not to make excuses for him, but the Devils had an insane amount of injuries.
mhm,
Dougie Hamilton goes down pretty much
yeah,
early on in the season, gone for the year. Our best defenseman, crucial to the power play. And then we lose Jack for a couple different stints for some
mhm,
games. Nico Heischer, Timo Meier. So, everything that went wrong everything that could go wrong did go wrong. We missed a ton of man games with some of our star players, and it all just kind of fell apart. And then we had that situation with Michael McLeod. A lot of people forget about that.
oh,
He was
yes,
he was on pace to, I think, set the NHL record for, faceoff win percentage. He was a faceoff wizard. He was a gritty dude. He could hit, he could score, he would fight. He was one of my favorites, and obviously that unfortunate incident happened, and then he was gone. So it was just kind of that situation where it really was a cursed season that I'll never forget with all the stuff that happened, and it was too much to overcome. And Lindy was kind of the fall guy. I don't
yeah,
think that it was all his fault by any stretch. I think he definitely had some of the blame, but I think when something like that happens, I think just the organization was just looking to kind of shake things up and go in a different direction. And unfortunately, Lindy was a casualty of that. But in the time after he was let go, or more specifically this offseason, Fitzgerald came out and basically said that the roster was flawed. And if you look at all the
mm,
moves we've made this offseason, I mean, not that I'm pining for him to ever come back, but with a healthy lineup, you saw what Lindy
yeah,
did the year before, and with a healthy lineup going into next season with Markstrom and Pesci and Dillon and Nason and Cotter, I think Lindy would have steered the ship just fine. Now, I do think Keefe will be a good kind of change of pace, new voice in the locker room and kind of a fresh slate for some of these guys that maybe they needed. Absolutely. But, a lot of people pile on Lindy, I think, unfairly. And I made some
mhm,
reactionary videos in the moment, kind of bashing him at different times. But after you cool off and look at the whole thing, Was he the full blame? Absolutely not. Was he maybe a small part of the problem? Sure. But I will always remember that 22-23 season finally and what Lindy did with this young group and brought them, further than they've ever been before in their careers.
Yeah, it's a really good point too. You talk about all those cup winning seasons you had, and then you had that record breaking year where
Yeah.
you said 112 points. Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of gets lost in the shuffle, after you go through this year, then he gets fired. But that's a really good point to remember for him. And he can't play goal. So
Right.
maybe that was an issue last year. Possibly, not sure.
In my
We'll
in
talk.
my I ran about all the injuries. Yeah, I
Mm,
forgot to mention. I don't know how I could that league worst goaltending for a majority of the season, right?
yeah.
So on top of all the injuries, all of a sudden Schmidt and Vanacek couldn't stop a beach ball.
Mm-mm.
And part of that also was, they played bad, and not to completely bash the goalies, but a lot of it was with Hamilton going down.
Yes.
We
Mhm.
now had we had planned for Luke Hughes and his kind of learning on the job training as part of the whole kind of recipe. But
Mhm.
then Dougie goes down, and now we have Shimo Nemitz, another kid in the lineup, and with all the other injuries, and then relying on two teenagers to log a lot of minutes on the blue line, with the
Yeah.
goalies being the way they were for the whole season, it was just way too much to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to ask in that Metro division. Even the teams that don't make. I mean, Pittsburgh could be a tough out. Washington was kind of a tough out. Even Philadelphia was right there for a
Look,
while,
man,
playing some tough
it's the
hockey. So,
NHL. There's no gimmies in this league. And
mm-mm.
another thing that I look back on the lost, I'll call it the lost season forever now, the 23-24 season, but they were kind of right there till the end. And if you
Mm,
look, we dropped games to some of those teams where you're like, this has to be a win,
yeah.
losing to Anaheim at home and losing to
Oh,
San Jose. Like we just, bottom feeders of the league just giving away points. And I remember talking about it in my post game kind of recap videos. I was like, these are the games that you're going to look at the end of the year. If we miss by a small margin, you look back at these games and you're like, you just can't be giving points away like this. And they did it constantly. And I don't
yeah.
think they won. I don't think they won more than 3 games in a row last year. So whenever you see stuff like
Oh,
that, it's going to be a lot. And the Metro, like you said, is a very unforgiving division. And there's no easy points to be had. And so when you give points away against the bottom feeders, it's going to be hard to claw into the playoffs. And we got too far back, and that was it. It's all she wrote.
yeah.
All
That's
she
that's
wrote.
that's tough. Tough one. You referenced Sheldon Keefe. Of course, new coach for you guys coming into this year, coming out of 5 years in Toronto. We Bruins fans know his name all too well up here. There were a lot of coaching candidates out there this year. A lot of good choices. Did New Jersey get it right with Sheldon Keefe?
I think in the grand scheme of things, they did. I originally wanted Berube because I'm just
Mm,
I'm just an old school kind of fiery, you know, disciplinarian type kind of. That's kind of what I gravitate towards. Just because, and people, younger people are like, you're always talking about the old days and stuff. But it's like, listen, that's the era I lived through as a kid, and I watched what they did, and we have 3 banners hanging up in the arena because of it. And so it's
yeah.
hard for me to argue with past. You have a body of work to go on, and so we've had a lot of, hard nosed kind of taskmaster coaches over the years, and I thought that might be what the team needed. Fitzgerald in one of his many offseason press conferences referenced that maybe there was too much of a country club kind of atmosphere, and I thought
Hmm.
that a guy like Berube could come in and kind of kick him in the pants and light the fire, if you will, to get them going. But I do think when I see it now, maybe that would have been too much of a culture shock for the young club. I mean, I just some of them seem after you see their body language after some of the games and things. I think going from Lindy to Berube would just been one extreme to the other, and Fitzgerald obviously has a better pulse on the personalities and things of the team than any of the outsiders covering or watching the team do. And so I do think Keefe might be a good balance of he's not going to let you get away with the country club type stuff that Lindy did, but he's not going to be the ruthless, cold-blooded assassin like Berube. So I think he might be kind of that intermediate where he's gonna be able to maybe be like a chameleon and kind of
Hmm.
mold to the whatever situation he thinks will best fit the team or best benefit the team at the time. And so I do think that he is a very good hire for this club. I have very high expectations for him, and especially with the improvements we made. And I just rattled through a couple of them a couple minutes ago. But as you mentioned, the goaltending was abysmal, and now we have Markstrom. And a lot of people, oh, Markstrom's so old, blah blah blah.
No,
Listen,
he's good.
You saw Bobrovsky play at a high level and win the cup this year as I think a 35-year-old. The Devils' own Marty Brodeur brought him to the Cup Finals in 2012 as a 40-year-old. And
Mhm.
so I do think 2 years of Markstrom signed me up. I wanted him going back to the rumors midseason last year. I really wanted him and never materialized. But then you have,
Yeah,
so when you have Keefe with Markstrom with two great veteran D-men and Pesci and Dillon, plus a little more sandpaper up front with Nason coming over from Carolina and Cotter from Vegas. I really like the way it's all shaping up, and it looks good on paper. And now we just have to, wait till October to see that it hopefully translates on the ice.
yeah. What I really like about the Sheldon Keefe hire for New Jersey is he's lived in this world before with rising young stars. You think about Austin Matthews and Marner up there and having to, kind of navigate that uh, crazy media market in Toronto. I mean, I know New Jersey has a really probably pretty deep media market too, but probably quite nothing quite like Toronto when it comes to
You'd
hockey.
actually be surprised, Benjamin.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the it's smaller in size and more timid markets you could go to. It's nothing like, and I think a lot of the players over the years have referenced it kind of as a positive where, you're not beaten down per se, but a lot of the big hockey markets like the Torontos and Chicago, any Detroit. It is, I think, a more tumultuous kind of situation, especially when the team's not doing good. And once in a while, you'll get a tougher question or something. But overall, I would say the New Jersey hockey media is probably as tame as it gets, and I think that could be good for a guy like Keith. Like as you mentioned, he's
Mhm.
obviously been successful everywhere he was regular season, right? I don't think
Yeah.
he's ever missed the playoffs at any level of hockey. He won the
When
was
the
it the Calder?
Calder,
Yeah, in the AHL. And so
uh,
he earned
yeah,
his job.
17, 18 with the
Yeah, he earned
Marlies.
his
Yeah.
job in the big leagues, and he's had tons of, high 90s, 100 plus point seasons.
Mhm.
And they've obviously struggled as a group in Toronto to, make those deep runs in the playoffs. Hopefully, when he comes here, it'll be him pushing this young group to get to the furthest point of their careers as well as his. I guess the second round, yeah, is the furthest he's ever gotten. And so I would be ecstatic for my New Jersey Devils to be in the 2025 Eastern Conference Finals. I'd cry tears of joy, Benjamin. Little tears coming down my cheeks.
They very well could get there too. I also think with coaches, we see it all the time when they get their second opportunity or third opportunity, you see typically marked improvement. We saw it with Bruce Cassidy, kind of a failure in Washington, had to work his way up through Providence, wildly successful in Boston, now a cup winner in Vegas. You wonder if Keefe new change of scenery with a really good team with good young stars, kind of similar to Toronto in a lot of ways. I think it's
Very
a really
reminiscent.
yeah, 100%. Now, the whole Craig Berube thing, I thought he would have been a perfect fit in New Jersey. I think he's a Philadelphia guy anyway, so he's kind of
I
in that
wanted him.
area.
I wanted
Yeah.
him.
And as a Bruins fan, I am pissed that he's in Toronto. You want to talk about a country club feel? That's the Maple Leafs, at least in my opinion. I think Berube is going to shake things up to the betterment of that team and to the detriment of the rest of the Atlantic Division. I think
It'll,
so.
it'll definitely be interesting to see. And a lot of other fans wanted him as well that I was talking to. I When we didn't get him like quickly and it was kind of lingering on and then
Mm,
Toronto got bounced, I was like my feeling was kind of he probably had the Devils on his radar as like a backup, and it seemed like he was holding out for the Toronto job the whole time, and that's the way it
yeah.
played out. And so, we will see the Maple Leafs for our home opener in New
Oh,
Jersey when we return from Prague. We will see Berube and those Maple Leafs in our barn on I think
yeah.
October 10th, maybe, or I forget, but that's our home opener. So
I'll have my New Jersey hat on for that one. I promise you that. Oh, that's great. You mentioned Markstrom, of course. You guys finally do make the big trade, bringing Markstrom over from Calgary this offseason. Giant upgrade, no question about it. And you did talk about last season with the trade deadline. There was a lot of rumors about Markstrom coming over. Had Fitzgerald been able to pull that off, let's say sometime in early February, How far do you think New Jersey would have gone?
I don't think far, but this is where
Uh,
I kind of diverge from a lot of people's opinions or a lot of Devils fans' opinions, but a lot of people did kind of agree with me is that, had we got Markstrom, we probably would have made the playoffs and lost in either the first or second round.
mhm,
But I personally value the team and this young group making the playoffs again and something to build off of and going through the playoff wars because as you've seen with a lot of teams, the Lightning and even the Caps, um, most teams don't just come out of nowhere and win the cup right away.
right.
They'll get to the playoffs as the first step, then maybe they'll push a little bit further and either make it to the finals or the
Oh,
conference finals. And you just saw it with Florida, right? I mean,
well,
they
I was
got
just thinking that, yeah.
Matthew Kachuk, they get to the finals year one, they lose to the Knights, and they get all the way back the next year. And I just am one of the people that feel that those, playoff busts are part of the growing process, part of the team, kind of coming together, getting this playoff experience and really learning what it takes to win in the playoffs. To miss the playoffs after that record breaking season where we won
Yeah,
around, to me, it was like, yeah, we took a step forward that year, and then missing the playoffs is like two steps back.
yeah,
Now, on paper, I do believe the team we're going to be heading into next season with is better than that 22-23 team on paper. I do really
sure.
believe that. But now we just have to see how it all comes together. But no, I don't think they were going to go far. And I think in this day and age of analytics, I do believe, the Devils are one of the teams that are very reliant on analytics. And I believe that they made a calculated decision that they said, listen, even if we get somebody, we're not going to go far. Let's just kind of sit back, see how it all unfolds, maybe give some
Yeah.
younger kids more ice time or opportunities to give some of these kids looks and get the higher draft pick. And I honestly believe, I don't think anyone would ever admit that in pro sports, but the reality is I think that that's the calculated decision that they made.
Mhm. Sure, sure.
And, we missed the playoffs as a result. I do think missing the playoffs, like I said, after that record breaking season to me is more damaging than the benefit of getting a top 10 pick. But here we are. But to answer your
Yeah,
question in a one sentence, not far, but I would have
yeah.
preferred to get swept in the first round than to not make it.
Oh, sure. And the reason I ask it is, looking at some of the team numbers from last year, they don't strike you as a team that typically misses the playoffs. You guys were 12th in goals for, at 3.22 a game. You were 13th on the power play. You were 10th actually on the penalty kill, at an 80.7%, third in the faceoff circle. Now,
Like,
yes, your goals against wasn't great, and
well, it
some
wasn't
things like
great,
that.
putting it nicely.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys were 26th in the league, but you talk about 12th, 13th, 10th, 3rd in some of these key categories. That's typically a team that's, a little bit higher up. And I think that's where that goaltending obviously, played a
For
part.
sure.
Yeah. 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 Lots of defensive changes, as you referenced earlier with this team. You had Smith going out, Marino heading over to, was it Utah? Um,
Mhm.
Pesci, Dillon coming in, 2 guys that were high on my list of top free agents for the season. I thought really 2 great gets for you guys. How do you think it's gonna play out on the ice this year with those, the new look defense?
I part of being a fan, I guess, is sometimes just being hopeful, but I do think now, hopefully, Nemitz and Hughes take the next step. They're
Mhm.
very young, and they're still going to be very young for another couple of years, but hopefully, they kind of develop a little bit more during the season, cut down on some of the rookie mistakes we saw last year, and they're going to be more insulated now with veteran partners. And so I think in conjunction with the better goaltending that hopefully now these young kids aren't going to be feel the weight of the world on their shoulders. They'll be partnered up with veterans and hopefully with all of that with an improved offense with which would just be improved just by sheer of being
Just being
healthy.
healthy. Yeah,
Yeah, I
being
mean,
healthy.
a great someone a wise man once said I think the best defense is a good offense. And
Yeah,
so if all those guys are healthy, hopefully the puck is on our opponent's end a lot more than it was and we're not constantly playing in our own end. And that should, lead to hoping a much better record and a much lower goals against.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, you have, of course, the young kids. This will take a little pressure off them having these veterans back. And then, of course, Dougie Hamilton, is he healthy? Is he gonna be ready to go?
It's what they said. Fitzy said
Yeah,
everyone's on track for September, and so
yeah,
you
good.
never know coming off an injury like that. Like, is a slap shot going to lose steam? I don't know. hopefully not, but he has an absolute cannon on the power play.
Oh, we
He
remember.
has great vision.
Yeah.
And even sometimes like transition game, like he's very good at either making a pass or skating it out on his own. There was a lot of times last year where we just kind of got caught in our own end and it just kind of sloppy. The team definitely runs much smoother when he's in the lineup. And so hopefully again with him and everyone else staying healthy, I think the sky is the limit for this team. I really do believe that. And there's a reason why, Vegas has us as the third most favorite to win the cup,
Mm. Yep, there you go.
you know?
Yeah, and those young guys taking that next step, and I think that experience last year, even though it was maybe kind of a negative one for Hughes and some others, um, you just expect them to, utilize that and just be better, like you said, fewer mistakes and not feeling that pressure with having those big guns kind of up at the top. I even think Marino struggled last year. I mean, that 2 years ago when y'all picked him up, I thought he was like pretty darn good that first season. Last year seemed like a different player. I didn't watch enough games to really
Him
get a big
him and
sense of it, but
Siegenthal are both. Again,
yeah,
they at the times the year before had better they're paired with better guys.
yeah.
And so, Severson and Graves left. Now we have a lot of kids back there and it showed. It really showed. The inexperience and the jitters came out a lot last year. We saw flashes of brilliance from both Nemitz and Hughes, but we also saw like, oh my God, like total rookie snafu. And as long as they cut that down this year, which I believe
Mhm.
they will, with a
Yeah.
with a legitimate number one goalie in net, I'm very excited.
I mean, not just a great number one goalie. I've always really liked Jake Allen. You've got a really good backup there as well. Very solid, durable number
Mhm,
two. So I think you guys have a really good goalie room going into this year.
for
Uh,
sure.
You got about 5 million left under the cap. Of course, we know that it's August, news gets quiet, not a whole lot left in the free agent market. But in your opinion, are the Devils done? And if not, what would you like to see them add to this roster?
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that they are done. They just signed. We had Nolan Foote was a restricted free agent. They just signed him today to basically league minimum. It was a two-way deal, so it
Mhm.
doesn't take up a lot of cap. It's like 825 or whatever it is. But the big one they still have to get done is Dawson Mercer, and on
Oh,
a
that's right.
bridge, yeah, on a bridge deal, that's going to basically suck up the majority of the rest of the money, and so there's really not much left in the kitty, if you will. And I think Fitz alluded to wanting to leave a little bit for potential tinkerings, during the season. And so I think we're going to see Mercer signed, and I think that's going to be it
Mhm.
heading into next season. And overall, I'm thrilled with the offseason we had, honestly. A couple months back, and I think it was a TSN interview, Fitzgerald or Fitzgerald said he wanted to get heavier, edgier, more violent, which I'm a big proponent of. I tell everyone on my channel I'm an old school fan. I like the Neanderthal hockey. I like the fisticuffs that we don't really see anymore. But I grew up watching guys that played the body, and it's obviously been de-emphasized in the current game. It's more focus on the skill and finesse and the speed and all that. But you do see, teams that are willing to do that and get to the dirty areas, like the Panthers. They led the
Mhm.
league in checks.
Mhm.
I don't think it's a coincidence that they made it to back-to-back finals and won the cup this year. There is,
I
I do
mean,
believe, a place for the physicality in the game, and you saw it.
yeah, and I think if you look back over the last few years, who has won? Obviously, Florida, physical, hard to play against team.
Mhm,
Vegas went 4 lines deep. They were physical, hard to play against. Colorado, despite their speed and skill with McKinnon and McCarr and those boys,
mhm.
they had a physical side to their game as well. And then of course those Tampa teams. I mean, forget
You
about
can't
it. They
you
were
can't
they
win
were
without
heavy
it.
and yeah.
In my
Uh,
opinion, to make a deep playoff run, you need to have warriors, and I think we kinda got away from that for a couple of years, and so this offseason, we went out, we got some of that grit in Nason and Cotter, and then obviously some, um, quality defensemen and a quality goalie. It pretty much got everything you would have wanted as a Devil fan outside of the top 6 forward, which I'm perfectly fine with given that we kinda hit gold everywhere else, in my
mhm.
opinion.
You didn't want Jake DeBrusk? We would have sent him to you. Come on now.
I think a lot
Um,
of the Devils fans were looking for that flashy name for the top 6, but with the cap and
yeah.
the other moves we made, it just wasn't in the cards.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And we've got about a half hour in, and I have yet to ask you about Jack Hughes, and that's my fault. But of course, Jack is your all-world, forward, all-world center. Couple of questions around him. Is this the year that number one, he stays healthy, and number two, that he becomes that heart candidate that we all know is in his game?
Oh man, I hope so. Um, the thing that frightened me about him was his size from the beginning. And again, not to knock the small guys. We've seen tons of small guys. Going back to Theo Fleury, and even on a lesser scale for my New Jersey Devils, Brian Giunta was an undersized great player, and
Oh,
he
right.
and Marty San Louis. He's not as small as those guys, but I do remember the first they did some event at the arena after he was drafted, like some meet and greet thing. And I remember just seeing how like lean and like young
Mm,
he looked. And I texted all my buddies when I walked out of there. I'm like, this kid's gonna get killed. I was like,
yeah.
he's gonna get killed. He's obviously, started to put on more muscle and things. I just hope that this summer, he's rehabbing his injury. I just hope he comes into the season a little bit bulkier, a little bit, because I do think that's part of it. Like, the NHL, even in today's game, while there's not as much hitting and violence as we used to see back in the day, there's still
Mm.
hitting. And I
Oh,
do
yeah.
think that a lot of teams, we did catch a lot of them by surprise in that 22-23 season, where teams watch tape and, coaches scheme how to play us. And I do think a common element we saw a lot of the time was if you beat up on these kids, they kind of wilt. And we saw that last year, and there was no answer. I think that's a lot of the reason why Fitz went out and got some more beef for the team. But if he can stay healthy, I really hope he does. I'm rooting for him. I really hope this is the year we see 80 to 82 games from him. And I do firmly believe that if he does see the ice for even 75 games, I think this will be a year where you'll see him, in that 115, 120 point range.
Mhm.
Um, and like you said, I do think he is a heart quality type player. It's just with some of these point totals now, like, McDavid and what these guys and
Oh,
Kucherov,
wow.
like, it's just disgusting. Like, how many points do you need to even, be nominated? 130 plus? Like, some of the
Right.
point totals are staggering.
I mean,
Um,
Pastrnak can't even really get in the top 5
that's what I'm
at this
saying.
rate.
Like, these
It's
are
crazy.
all, in my opinion, heart type players, right? But to actually win the heart, I think I've said on different episodes of my show that I essentially think that it's basically the McDavid trophy. It's like defaulting to him every year, and it's like,
Mm,
can you wrestle it away from him? And I think it's
right.
going to be tough. I think it's really going to be tough. I'd love to see Jack win the heart, but if he plays 75 plus games, has, 100, 110 points, and we do well the regular season and make it into the playoffs, that's all I could hope for. The individual hardware is nice, but really we
Mhm,
just need a cup. And I'm hoping that he could stay healthy, and this will kind of be his official coming out party. Even though, again, 22-23, he had 99 points, just one shy of that 100.
mm,
What a great year! But again, missed a lot of time with injury. So I'm hoping he could play the 82 games, man. I really do. And if he does, maybe he gets in the conversation. But the competition is stiff right now for
yeah.
that trophy. It really is. With the way these guys are putting up the points, like McDavid is just a different level, in my opinion, of
He's
anything
yeah,
I've ever
he's
seen.
he's a beast, no question, and I think just as a hockey fan, I don't wanna see Hughes, continue to struggle with injuries. You worry that he becomes that player with all the potential in the world and can just never quite have that, 4 or 5, 6 years in a row where he's just that has that consistency. And
Mhm.
um, just as a hockey fan, I'm cheering for him to, like you said, put up the 75, 80 games, get to 50 goals, get to that 110, 120 mark, which I think he can do. Because you want to see greatness, right? I mean,
For
yes,
sure.
we all want our teams to win, no question. But just as a hockey fan, I just love seeing guys like, like him excel and fulfill that potential.
From your mouth to God's ears, man. Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully nothing goes wrong and we see that from him this season. I'm hopeful for sure.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So we go back, of course, you guys picked up Timo Meier from, San Jose, got him locked up, I think, for another 4 years. What is it? 8.8 million, I think.
No, we
52.
signed him for 8 years. He got signed up.
Did you re-up him? Oh, okay, so there's another 4 on top of that.
No, no, no,
Alright.
no. So he was coming. His deal was expiring, and we signed him for 8 years. So we have him for 7 more.
Alright, I must have read that wrong on Puckpedia then. I probably was looking at his old
Is that the
contract.
new? That's the new?
That's the new cap friendly,
Yeah,
yep.
I haven't. Let me pull it up. Right, I've actually been meaning to pull this up for so long,
Yeah,
and
it's a good site. So, it's laid out a little different than cap friendly, but,
yeah. So
the
he's
way it's
yeah.
go
So
ahead.
one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So he's signed through 2030, 31. He becomes a free agent in
Alright.
2031. Big money for Timo. I think it's gonna be
Mm.
worth it. I think that's
Alright,
where you're
well,
going. Yeah.
that's kinda where I was going is, would you do this trade over again if you could? And obviously, we know the cap's gonna continue to go up, so that 8.8 is gonna look a lot better as you go. It just hasn't looked of course, last year we know was last year, but nothing looked right last year, but, yeah, I'm just curious if Devil fans are like, "Nah, that was a bad trade, we shouldn't have locked him up."
I think most fans are thrilled with the trade.
Mhm,
Is a small contingency of people that are not, but that's pretty much any deal outside of complete home run grand slam type deals where it's unanimous. I would, if I could go back in time, I would do the trade 10 times out of 10, and I would give him the
uh,
extension as well. Like you said, with the cap going up as the deal ages, he's going to be, he'll be probably producing more points than some guys making 11, 12 million at some point in the not too distant future. I think the injuries, again, not to make excuses, but it's just the reality. He lost a lot of time. And when
mhm,
he came back, he was still injured. He actually didn't go play in the World Championships with Team Switzerland, who made it to the gold medal game. He didn't play. He after the season, he got surgery. And
yeah,
so not only did he miss a ton of time when he was injured, which I told there's a lot of Timo haters on my channel. They all know I'm a big proponent of Timo time, one of my favorite players on the team currently. He battled through the injury when he came back, and he started to look like the guy we traded for. He was used on the left wing by Lindy, and I don't know why, and he wasn't getting power play time as well. When Toffoli got dealt at the deadline and we moved on from Lindy, we started using him the way he was used in San Jose, which
mhm,
shocking, right? Like this
right.
guy was a force in San Jose. We trade for him. We give him this extension. How about we use him the same exact way? Like what a novel concept. We put him on the right wing. He got power play time, and he led the league in goals in March with I believe it was either 14 or 15, and he was on fire down the stretch. That's the guy I believe that Fitzgerald thought he was trading for, and the guy that he gave that monster deal to. I think, assuming he stays healthy, which hopefully he does, I think he's going to be, like a 35-35 or 40-40 kind
Mhm,
of guy for this club. And with
and
the game he plays and the tenacity he brings, again, I mentioned earlier, I've complained that the team was entirely too soft for the past few years, and Fitzgerald agreed finally this offseason that we needed some bulldogs. He is the only kind of, in my opinion, throwback power forward player that we have at the moment that's in the mold of like a Billy Guerin or a Keith Kachuk or something of that nature,
yeah,
where he could score a lot of different ways. He'll crash the net, get dirty goals. He'll tip them. He'll blast one timers from the circle on the power play. He has a little hands in tight, and you'll see a little bit of that. A little bit of everything from him. And he scored a goal last year. I'll email you the link. It was the most beautiful goal of the season where he blows up two guys on. He basically blasts through two guys and like does this one hand maneuver. I reference it constantly because it was just poetic. And he was the only guy, definitely the only guy on our team, and probably one of a handful of guys in the league that could have scored the goal with this sequence. I'm going to send it to you. It was completely beautiful. But
no,
I'm
that'd be
I'm the
great to see
biggest
that.
Timo. I'm the biggest Timo supporter on the planet. So I would go back and do the deal, no questions asked, and I give him that extension as well. And hopefully, for my New Jersey Devils brethren that are naysayers on Timo Meier, you will see this year Timo time is coming out on the regular.
Mark it down, it's happening,
Market,
it's
market.
happening. There was a lot of chatter about that though on, like, NHL radio, when they were playing him on the left side. There were a lot of criticism from some of those pundits on NHL radio, like, "What
It
is
made no
Lindy Ruff
sense.
doing here?" Like,
It made no
it's
sense. It never made sense to me. I would rant about it. And a lot of the Devils fans on that watch my channel would rant about it in the comments as well. And it was just like, that of all go circling back to Lindy, of all the things that I would be mad at Lindy for, that is one of the most glaring ones, is that he didn't see that, he didn't look like himself on the left, even though he can play both sides. And when they asked him about it, he's like, "Oh, I could play both." Clearly, your dominant side is on the right. And the fact that we just continued to play him on the left for that amount of time was maddening. And again, not giving him the power play time, like those are the two components of what made him the player he was in San Jose. Right wing, power play one.
Power play.
He was getting nothing. And then finally, Lindy leaves, Toffoli gets dealt, and now all of a sudden they're like, oh, let's try this guy the way he was a force in San Jose. And then shockingly enough, the
It
points
works.
and the goals were just flying in. And we're like,
Uh,
what the hell did you wait so long to do this for? It was probably of all the things outside of not getting a goalie much sooner, which I told you I think they just made that calculated decision. It was the biggest head scratcher of the year. Like, one of our highest paid players is being completely misutilized. And for what? Like the blueprint was there. How to
yeah.
successfully deploy Timo Meier in your offense. And I'm just glad they finally figured it out. And hopefully now smooth sailing heading into next year with no questions about that.
Oh, you would hope so. You would hope that Keith would have an understanding of how to use him. I'm sure he's diving into that already. But when we look at the Metro Division coming into the season, I really look at a kind of a bad off season for Carolina. I really wasn't impressed with what they did. The Islanders, Pittsburgh didn't really impress me. They just didn't really do much. They got older. We know where the New York Rangers are. And then you look at kind of the bottom with Columbus and teams like that. Like, how do you see this Metro division playing out? I just think it's a really interesting division coming into this year.
I'm not going to say I think the Devils definitely win it, but I believe the Devils will be definitely contending for the division title down the stretch. And I do think, I can never count Carolina out. I would just consider them like a winning franchise, even though they haven't won the cup
Mhm.
in forever. They're just always there and they're always a tough out. So I wouldn't be surprised if they won, but I think it's gonna be a kind of a tight race between the Devils and the Rangers. I really do believe that. While I do think the Rangers are kind of aging out of their prime here with a lot of these guys, Zibanejad and Kreider. I just think I have that much reverence for Shesterkin, and I do
Yeah,
know
Igor.
how an amazing goalie, being spoiled as a Devils fan during all those years for Marty. That a money goalie like that can be the ultimate difference maker, and he was for the Rangers this year. I mean, he kind of carried them through stretches of the season and the playoffs, and so I could never count them out with him in net and a pretty solid, team in front of him. And so I do think it's going to be a tight one between the Devils and Rangers, and I think it'll probably come down to the last, week and a half of the season to see who wins that division.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, and that was actually my next question is kind of where you had them in the playoff, picture, and are they a true blue cup contender this year? I kind of tend to think that they are. Um, And I kind of agree with you that it's like New York and, New Jersey kinda battling with Carolina, hanging around. I haven't done my predictions yet, but I was really tempted to maybe have, like, the big shocker, Carolina missing the playoffs for the first time in forever, but I
Mm.
don't think I can go there. I think they're still a decent enough
That's a
team
brave.
despite
That's a
their
brave prediction there.
Rod the Bod would hear it, he'd get awfully mad at me, so I think we'll probably table that one for now, but, without giving anything away, I don't know if you've done your predictions on your show, but do you feel like this New Jersey team is a true blue cup contender this year?
I mean, people are going to flame me for this, but I personally have to say yes. And I have said this on multiple shows now that I've done over the course of the summer, because the thing I will keep beating a drum and referencing is, and a lot of Devils fans after last season were all doom and gloom, like, oh, we're just happy to make the playoffs this year. And it kind of seems like Fitzgerald and the organization kind of took that approach as well, which infuriated me watching these press conferences. It's like, that would be great if the 22-23 season never happened, but it did.
Right.
So to see people act like this, it makes me crazy, because it's like we're not the scrubs that we were 4 or 5 years ago. This team
Mhm.
did kind of turn the corner. Last year, we were ravaged by injuries, ravaged by absolutely terrible goaltending. We had a fluke court case pluck one of our best depth players and a face-off wizard. And so for me, I firmly believe, and a lot of Devils fans have disagreed with me on this, but I believe on paper this team is better than that franchise record-setting 112-point team from 22-23. I really do. We have a legitimate goalie in Markstrom now. We had Akira Schmid and Vanacek then.
Mm,
Markstrom is a huge upgrade. Luke Hughes and Nemitz now with an additional year of seasoning. Nemitz wasn't on that team, but Luke Hughes was much more developed now than the 22-23 playoffs. With Jack Hughes and Nico and all these guys, Bratt even
mhm,
have now kind of advanced in their careers, and so with Cotter and Nason, I I just don't see how it's not a better team on paper. And a lot of fans were like, oh, complaining about some of the guys we lost from that team. But in my opinion, the goaltending is a huge upgrade from that team. I think the defense is a sizable upgrade. And the only area I could say that I think is roughly even, whether you go with the 22-23 team or the 24-25 team, very minor either way. We lost Wood, Sharon Govich, um, and listen, Sharon Govich he showed signs to the Devils, but now a lot of people are kind of bringing into the equation the season he had last year in Calgary. He wasn't that player on the Devils. And so for me to swap out Sharon Govich and Wood for Cotter and Nason, I think it's pretty close.
mhm.
Either way. Not the Sharon Govich on the Flames of last year, but the Sharon Govich that was on the Devils, I would say at worst case a draw. And so for me, if your changes on the bottom six are basically a wash, but you get considerably better on the blue line and in goal, I think that's a much better team. And I'm hoping that all does translate into being a true cup contender. Now, I would be stunned if they didn't make the playoffs. I'll be honest. So you knock on wood, barring a fairly healthy team, I think they easily make the playoffs. The question is going to
Yeah,
be how far can they really go? And I'm just hoping to man, the conference finals would be nice. I'd love to see them win the cup, but
of course.
as
Yeah.
you know, just to say, oh, we're going to win the cup, it's the hardest trophy in sports to win for a reason, and you got to go through wars. And so a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people are like, oh, there's no way they're going to win this year, but I can't say that they can't win. I do believe they will be there with an opportunity to really make a special run. And Vegas has them as the third favorite for a reason. That's not, me or other Devils fans being biased. That's real metrics and data and however
Yeah,
else,
numbers.
these odds makers come up with that. I didn't say they're the third most likely team to win the cup. Vegas did. And that doesn't happen by accident. And so you take all those things into consideration. And a lot of people said I'm crazy, but I do believe they can win a cup. And I am hoping for it, certainly.
And I mean, 81 points a year ago, they've definitely improved by more than 10 points. I think 91 points got you to the playoffs last year. So there's no question they've improved by 5 games at least. And, they should, again, in my opinion, be well over a 100-point team if, everybody can stay generally healthy and they can just get like regular kind of seasons out of everybody. You mentioned Jesper Bratt, kind of a name you almost forget about on this team, but he played whole season, 82 games, 27 goals, 56 assists. He had 83 points last year
Brad is a
on
beast.
7th place team.
I think he's one of the most underrated players in the league. He's not really a
Yeah.
household name. And if you're not like a super hockey junkie, he's not a guy that gets the headlines or gets the attention, I would say, of the hockey media at large. But for
Mhm.
people that really follow the game, he's a special player and he's been our most consistent and best forward for the past few seasons, easily. I love Bratt. I was glad when it looked like it could be a tumultuous contract extension with him. Supposedly his agent was playing hardball, but that got ironed out, and I'm thrilled that he's here. He is definitely a very top level talent on this team and
Yeah.
a big piece of the core that hopefully eventually brings a Stanley Cup back to New Jersey.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I forgot to mention this before we came on, but you see, I've got these couple little Lord of the Rings stickers behind me, and I didn't really explain that to you on the board. I'm a bit of a
Mhm.
Lord of the Rings nerd, and I've
Okay.
been using these as like, so if you see the Shire and then the Green Dragon, that means I've got you safely in the playoffs. You're in the Green Dragon, having some beers with the hobbits. You're very comfortable. You're just waiting the last couple weeks just for the season to end, and then the playoffs will start. So
Mhm.
um, if you're not a playoff team, I have Gollum up here that you're hanging out with Gollum in the caves and eating
Okay.
fish and all that. So yeah, it's just my old
I
man
like it. I like
nerdery
it. I've
stuff,
never seen it. A lot of people have told me I have to watch it. I'm not much of
Mm.
like a sci-fi fantasy guy, so a lot of
It's
times it's
okay.
hard for me, but I think maybe I'll give it a crack one day.
It's Buckle up. It's take you about 3 days to get through all the movies, and I will say the books are better than the movie. I mean, the movies were great.
Wow, there's no
I was a
chance of
big
me reading. 0 chance.
okay. Hey, it's
There's no
off season. It's still summertime. You got some time left.
it's
Come
hard,
on.
it's hard, man. I didn't like reading in school. I'm
Yeah.
doing a little book club with the, Marty Brodeur autobiography years later, I'm revisiting it, but outside of that, I couldn't tell you the last book I opened before that. It's a sad, read your books, kids, if for kids watching,
Yes.
don't be like
Yes.
me.
Yes. Yes. Read. 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 So I do have your podcast name running down below here, but tell the good people, where else they can find your stuff, your material.
Pretty much all I do is the videos. I mean, I'm starting to try to branch out a little bit more and get more involved on X and Instagram and all these things. But yeah, if you go to my channel on YouTube, you'll see my links for everything else there, and you could find me on the other platforms and such. But primarily right now, it's just on the YouTube channel. But you will see the other links there as well.
Yes, guys, go check him out on YouTube. That's Running with the Devils podcast. Definitely worth the follow, worth the subscribe. Very entertaining show over there, Ace. And thank you so much for taking this time, man. I really appreciate it. This has been really insightful, and hopefully we can down the road do something again.
No problem, Benjamin. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, hopefully, in what so to be, I'm trying to do some math in my head real quick. In about 8, 9 months, maybe we could do a Devils Bruins
Ooh,
Eastern Conference
Eastern
Final
Final.
preview, little Eastern Conference Finals preview. Sign
I
me
would
up.
be. I would though sign me up too. That would be amazing. That would be a lot of fun. Let's cheer for that. Let's cheer for that. So
And I could also
anyway,
I could drive to the road game, so I'm definitely hoping for that.
oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, Jersey to Boston isn't too bad of a not too bad of a
Mm-mm,
drive. So,
not at all.
so well, guys, everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you just for all the love and support here on my channel. And like I said, go check out Ace Running with the Devils podcast. Um, thank you again, Ace, and everybody. Until next time, be kind, show love, and God bless.